The moment Earth's mighty warship entered the Zenari star system, every civilization in the galaxy stopped what they were doing and watched in stunned silence. For countless years, the Galactic Federation had looked down on humanity as nothing more than a small, unimportant species from a forgotten corner of space. To them, humans were just useful workers, hired fighters, or simple traders, certainly not a real threat that anyone should worry about. But everything changed the day the destroyer arrived. This massive warship was completely different from anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. It wasn't smooth and beautiful like the graceful ships built by the elegant Alari people. It didn't have the curved, living designs that the mysterious Zith were famous for. No, the destroyer was built for one purpose: complete destruction. Sharp corners, thick armor plating, and weapons covering every inch of its surface. It didn't try to look pretty, it was meant to strike fear into anyone who saw it. And it wasn't traveling alone. Two smaller but equally terrifying ships flanked it on both sides, the Ghost Walker and the Iron Hammer. Each one looked more dangerous than any warship the Federation had ever built or faced in battle. These ships had come seeking revenge for the terrible attack on Proxima Colony. The Drath Empire, a race of insect-like aliens who controlled half the known galaxy, had made a deadly mistake. They had completely destroyed a human settlement, thinking that Earth would simply give up and beg for mercy, just like so many other weak civilizations had done before. The Drath leaders thought humans would fall to their knees and surrender. Instead, they got the destroyer. The Federation's diplomats went into complete panic mode. They sent urgent messages to all their allies, warning them to prepare for the storm that was coming. The Drath Empire, however, just laughed at the news. To them, humans were nothing but annoying insects, a tiny problem that could be easily crushed. They gathered their massive fleets, confident they could destroy whatever pathetic force Earth dared to send against them. Then the destroyer opened fire, and everything changed forever. The first blast completely vaporized the lead Drath battleship in the blink of an eye. Their protective shields, which had protected them through hundreds of years of war against weaker enemies, crumpled like thin paper under the incredible power of human weapons. The Federation watched in absolute horror as humanity showed them something no one thought was possible: complete technological dominance over every other species. Plasma cannons melted through ship hulls like butter. Massive metal projectiles the size of entire city blocks smashed through enemy battle formations as if they were made of fragile glass. Rail guns fired objects at nearly light speed, tearing apart whole fleets before the enemy ships could even begin to fight back. The Drath screamed for backup. They sent hundreds of their best warships to stop the human attack. It didn't matter at all. Earth had been watching and waiting for centuries. They had studied every piece of technology in the galaxy, learned every weakness of every major power, and when the moment finally came, they didn't just catch up to everyone else. They completely surpassed every civilization in one brutal, terrifying display of power. The Galactic Federation went into complete panic. If humanity could do this to the mighty Drath Empire, what could they do to everyone else? Then came the final message from the destroyer, a simple warning broadcast to every world in the Federation. Earth never forgets. Earth never forgives. Stay out of our way. And just like that, the entire galaxy trembled in fear. The broken remains of the Drath fleet continued floating through the darkness of space, glowing pieces of destroyed warships creating strange shadows against the backdrop of distant stars. The battle had lasted less than 1 hour, but its effects would be remembered for hundreds of years to come. The Galactic Federation's High Council, a gathering of the most powerful species in the known universe, sat in complete, shocked silence. The footage of the destroyer's attack played on a giant holographic screen in the center of their grand meeting hall. Not a single one of them had expected anything like this. Ambassador Kell of the Alari, a tall being with silver skin whose people had controlled galactic politics for thousands of years, was the first to speak. "We made a terrible mistake," he admitted, his usual calm voice replaced by obvious worry. "Humanity was nothing like what we believed them to be." The insect-like Chithari delegate made nervous clicking sounds with its jaw pieces and responded with obvious fear. They destroyed an entire battle group. The Drath had almost 100 warships, and the humans brought only 3. "They only needed 3, interrupted Grand General Thorak of the feline Thales people, his cat-like features tight with tension. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. Humanity had never been taken seriously as a military threat. Their fleets were thought to be old, weak, and barely able to defend themselves. And yet here they were, standing victorious over the ruins of one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. But it wasn't just their victory that filled the council with terror. It was the way they had fought. Most species had long ago stopped using physical projectile weapons, choosing instead to focus on energy-based combat systems. The humans, however, had perfected both types of warfare. Their ships fired chunks of incredibly dense metal at speeds close to light itself, tearing through protective shields that should have been completely impenetrable. They didn't just disable enemy ships, they completely destroyed them, turning them into floating debris in mere seconds. "They did not come for peace talks," the Zith representative whispered, its jelly-like body shaking with fear. "They did not ask for payment or compensation. They did not even declare war officially." "No," Kell agreed grimly. "They came for revenge." At that exact moment, a new transmission arrived. The Federation's high command expected demands for surrender, perhaps threats of more destruction. What they received instead was a cold, precise statement. "We will not seek war with the Federation. We will not expand beyond our current borders. But if any of you dare to touch another human world, we will do to your fleets exactly what we did to the Drath." A moment of heavy silence followed. Then the communication feed cut out completely. The message was crystal clear. The humans weren't trying to claim new territory. They weren't demanding tribute or payment. They weren't even looking for new allies. They had come to prove a point, and they had done it so completely that every government in the galaxy now whispered the same terrifying thought. What if the humans decide they want more? The Drath Empire was completely finished. Their home world, once a fortress planet filled with billions of their kind, now sat in eerie silence. Not because humanity had destroyed it, no, the destroyer had left Drath Prime completely untouched. But the message had been received loud and clear. The surviving Drath had surrendered before humanity ever reached their star system. Their ruling council had scattered, fleeing to the farthest corners of the galaxy. Their military, once a symbol of conquest and terror, had been reduced to floating wreckage in the void. The few warships they had left refused to fight back. Some even defected, offering themselves to other empires just to avoid facing Earth's forces again. But the galaxy's fear didn't come just from the destruction of the Drath Empire. It was how the humans had done it. Every species had heard the stories wars lasting decades, fleets fighting in long, drawn-out battles, entire campaigns fought over tiny sections of space. But humans had ended an empire in a matter of hours. They hadn't fought a war, they had carried out an execution. And now the question every ruler, every strategist, every military commander was asking was simple. What else are the humans hiding? The Galactic Federation scrambled to understand just how powerful Earth's military really was. They studied their intelligence reports, sent spies, bribed traitors, and even begged human diplomats for information. But no answers came. And that was what terrified them the most, because the humans hadn't even used their full fleet. The destroyer and its escort ships were just a tiny fraction of Earth's true power, the real fleet. No one knew where it was, how many ships it contained, or what weapons it carried. For the first time in galactic history, civilizations weren't afraid of an empire trying to conquer them. They were afraid of an empire that had no interest in conquest at all, an empire that only acted when provoked, but when it did, left absolutely nothing behind. The Alvari Confederation, once one of humanity's biggest critics, quietly pulled back their patrol ships from human borders. The Kari, who had once enslaved human prisoners of war, suddenly abolished all their forced labor programs. And the Zith, who prided themselves on staying neutral in all conflicts, refused to speak about the matter at all. Even the Galactic Federation's ruling body, usually so quick to pass punishments and control the course of interstellar politics, did absolutely nothing. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. If humanity ever decided to truly go to war, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The silence that followed humanity's display of power stretched across the stars like a blanket. No species dared to challenge them, and for the first time in galactic history, a single force had become completely untouchable. Even the most battle-hardened empires, those who had once laughed at the idea of human supremacy, now whispered in hushed voices about the destroyer. But while the galaxy cowered in fear, humanity was not sitting idle. Deep within the solar system, Earth's true military command met in a classified space station hidden behind Jupiter's massive shadow. Unlike the panic-filled councils of the Galactic Federation, the men and women seated around the war table were eerily calm. They had expected this outcome exactly. Admiral Jonathan Hayes, the mastermind behind humanity's modern war strategy, leaned forward. His voice, though level, carried the weight of what had just happened. "The Federation is afraid," he said simply, his steel-gray eyes scanning the room. That was the point. Around him sat the brilliant minds responsible for Earth's dominance: generals, strategists, scientists. Not a single one of them was celebrating. There were no toasts, no boasts of victory. Humanity had won a battle, but their true war had only just begun. A woman with sharp features and a data tablet in her hand cleared her throat. "The Drath Empire is completely shattered. Their economy will collapse within months. Reports show that smaller factions are already fighting over the remains." Hayes nodded. That had been expected. The moment the Drath showed weakness, the scavengers of the galaxy would descend upon them like vultures. It was how power worked out here. Another officer, a younger man with dark skin and a cybernetic eye replacement, spoke next. "The Federation hasn't made any moves against us, but we've intercepted communications between the Alari and the Zith. They're running computer simulations, testing out hypothetical battles with Earth." A smirk crossed Hayes's face, and the officer hesitated before continuing. "None of their models show them winning." A chuckle rippled through the room, but it wasn't one of amusement. It was the kind of laugh shared between soldiers who knew a terrible truth. Hayes leaned back, interlacing his fingers. "Then we proceed as planned." The woman across from him narrowed her eyes. "You think they'll still test us?" "They always do," he said with certainty. "Fear doesn't last forever. Eventually, someone will get brave. They'll think we got lucky against the Drath, that we don't have enough ships to fight a long war, that they can unite against us. And when they do..." Hayes's smirk faded. His voice became cold and certain. We remind them why the galaxy should be afraid. The room fell silent. There was no bloodlust in their expressions, no cruelty in their words, but there was absolute certainty. The galaxy had made the mistake of underestimating humanity once. They wouldn't get a second chance. The days following the destruction of the Drath fleet sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Every major empire, every ruling council, and every warlord in the known systems was left with the same thought. What have we done? For centuries, humanity had been treated as little more than an afterthought, a species confined to its small section of space, scraping for resources, barely keeping up with the great powers of the universe. They had been useful, sure hired as mercenaries, traders, explorers, but no one had ever truly feared them, not until now. And yet fear alone was not enough to keep the galaxy at bay forever. Admiral Jonathan Hayes knew this better than anyone. Sitting in the command center of Earth's secretive Black Station, he watched as dozens of intelligence reports scrolled past his screen. The Galactic Federation was shaken, but shaken did not mean defeated. It meant they were thinking. It meant they were planning. And eventually it meant they would act. The war against the Drath had not been a war, it had been an execution. But the next war, the one that Hayes knew was inevitable, that one would be different. "Sir," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Commander Elise Carter stood at attention, her expression grim. "We've detected an increase in fleet movements along our borders." Hayes exhaled slowly. "Which factions?" "The Alvari Confederation and the Zith Dominion are strengthening their defensive lines. We've also intercepted a Federation-wide transmission." Carter tapped on her holographic pad, and the message appeared before them. A grainy recording of High Chancellor Orion, one of the most powerful political figures in the galaxy, flickered to life. The reptilian leader's voice was measured but heavy with tension. "The events at Proxima Colony have shown us a terrifying truth. Humanity possesses weapons beyond anything we have prepared for. Their fleet, once dismissed as primitive, is capable of destruction on an unprecedented scale. We must not allow ourselves to be divided by fear. We must stand together. We must find a way to ensure that such a force is never again unleashed upon the galaxy." Hayes snorted. "They're uniting against us." Carter nodded. "It's only a matter of time before they attempt something." "They're scared," Hayes said, "but fear breeds desperation. They won't sit idle forever. They'll try to learn our secrets, infiltrate our systems, maybe even launch a surprise attack." "We're monitoring all possible intrusions," Carter assured him. "No ships have crossed into our space yet." Hayes stood, walking over to the massive viewport overlooking Jupiter's stormy surface. Black Station wasn't visible to the naked eye. It was hidden deep within the planet's radiation belt, undetectable to any known sensor technology. It was the beating heart of humanity's war machine, the place where their most dangerous projects were developed in complete secrecy. "What about our own movements?" he asked. Carter hesitated. "Fleet Command is holding the destroyer back at Titan Station, awaiting further orders." She glanced at him. "Sir, with respect, the Federation won't stay defensive forever. They're building alliances as we speak. If they come for us, they'll do it together." Hayes turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "Then we'll need to make sure they never come for us." Carter frowned. "Are you suggesting a first strike?" "No," Hayes said. "Not yet, but we need to show them that fear is the correct response, that there is no winning against us. We don't start wars, Carter," he exhaled. "We end them before they begin." Carter didn't respond immediately, but the weight of his words hung between them. The galaxy was on edge. waiting to see if humanity would make another move. And that was exactly where Hayes wanted them. "Begin deployment of Shadow Fleet Protocol," he ordered. "Let's remind the galaxy that no matter where they hide, no matter how many alliances they forge." He turned back to the viewport, watching Jupiter's storms rage below. Humanity is always watching. The first step of Earth's true war had begun. The stars belonged to humanity now, not in the way the Galactic Federation had once claimed control over the galaxy, ruling through treaties and trade agreements. No, humanity's rule was far more terrifying. It was silent, unchallenged, a presence that loomed over every empire, unseen yet undeniable. And Admiral Jonathan Hayes intended to keep it that way. Deep within Black Station, hidden beyond Jupiter's radiation storms, the command center hummed with quiet activity. Officers worked in focused silence, processing intelligence reports, monitoring fleet movements, and ensuring that humanity's watchful eye never blinked. Commander Elise Carter approached Hayes with a grim expression. "Sir, the Federation has begun mobilizing. Surveillance drones have picked up large-scale fleet exercises near Alari space." Hayes barely reacted. "How many ships?" "At least 300, she replied. "Mostly Alari, but there are Zith warships among them. They're training together, practicing large-scale battles." She hesitated before adding, "Their simulations focus on countering the destroyer." Hayes exhaled slowly. Predictable. It had been inevitable. Fear was a powerful motivator, but it only lasted so long. Eventually, paranoia set in. The Federation knew they couldn't allow humanity to exist as an unchecked power. They would try to find weaknesses, develop countermeasures, and when they believed they were ready, they would strike. They would do exactly what Hayes had predicted. "Any indication they're planning to move on us soon?" he asked. Carter shook her head. "Not yet. Right now, they're just preparing. But the fact that the Alvari and Zith are working together, that's never happened before. It means they're serious." Hayes stared at the galactic map hovering in front of them, red markers highlighting known fleet movements. He could already see the pieces shifting into place. The Federation wanted a war. They just didn't realize they had already lost. He turned to Carter. "Activate Shadow Fleet Protocol. I want silent infiltrations into their systems. No attacks, no battles, just surveillance. We're going to know everything before they make their move." She nodded. "I'll have the stealth ships deployed immediately." Hayes clasped his hands behind his back. "And bring the destroyer to the Kepler defense line. No direct confrontations, but I want them to see it. Let them know it's waiting for them." Carter smirked. "You want them to hesitate." "I want them to understand," Hayes corrected. "Before they even think about war, they need to feel the weight of what they're considering." He leaned in, his voice quiet but firm. "Because when we strike, it won't be a war." His eyes, cold as the void, met hers. "It'll be an extinction." Across the galaxy, in the heart of the Alari Confederation, High Chancellor Orion sat in his private chamber, watching the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. The footage showed a lone battleship, a human warship floating along the border of Federation space. The destroyer. It hadn't moved, it hadn't fired a shot, but it was there, like a predator watching its prey. Orion turned to his military advisors. "Tell me," he said carefully, "do we have any weapon capable of matching that ship?" Silence. The gathered officers exchanged nervous glances, none wanting to be the first to speak. Finally, a senior admiral cleared his throat. "No," he admitted, "we don't." Orion felt a chill run down his spine. He had hoped for a different answer, hoped in vain. Because no matter how much they trained, no matter how many ships they built, the truth remained. Humanity was already at war with them. The Federation just hadn't realized it yet. The moment the destroyer appeared along the Kepler defense line, the Galactic Federation froze. Messages flooded through encrypted channels, high-ranking officials whispered in darkened chambers, and military analysts scrambled to determine what it meant. The battleship had not crossed into Federation space. It had not fired a shot. It simply existed. And yet that alone was enough to bring the galaxy to the brink of panic. In the Alvari High Council, Chancellor Orion stood before a holographic display, his eyes locked on the massive warship floating in the void. Even from millions of kilometers away, its presence was suffocating. An aide leaned in, voice hushed with barely concealed terror. "Sir, our forces remain on high alert. We've positioned 3 fleets along the sector border, but—" He hesitated. "But what?" Orion snapped. The aide swallowed hard. "We have no idea what's inside that ship. We don't even know the extent of human technology." That was the problem, wasn't it? Humanity had revealed only what they wanted the galaxy to see. They had unleashed the destroyer against the Drath, yes, but what if that was just a distraction? What if their true weapons, their true warships, were hidden somewhere beyond the reaches of known space, waiting for the right moment to strike? Orion turned to his military advisors. "Tell me we have something, some countermeasure." A Zith strategist clicked his mandibles. "We've been running combat simulations against the destroyer. Every scenario ends in catastrophic loss." The room fell into silence. Orion clenched his fists. He had been prepared for war, but not this kind of war. Not one where his people were already outmatched before the first shot was even fired. "We cannot allow ourselves to be paralyzed by fear," he said finally. "The humans have power, yes, but they do not rule us. If they think they can intimidate the Federation into submission, they are mistaken." One of the Alvari generals stepped forward. "Do you propose an attack, Chancellor?" Orion hesitated. That was the question, wasn't it? Strike first or wait for the inevitable. Either choice carried its own kind of death sentence. "No," he said at last. "Not yet, but we will prepare." Across the galaxy, preparations for war began. Meanwhile, aboard the destroyer, Admiral Jonathan Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the distant Federation fleets through the viewport. They were gathering like insects, their ships tiny specks in the darkness, bristling with weapons yet afraid to come closer. "Good," he murmured. Commander Elise Carter approached him, data pad in hand. "Federation forces are holding position. No aggressive movements." "They're afraid," Hayes said simply. She hesitated, "but fear won't last forever." "No," he admitted, "it won't." That was why Shadow Fleet Protocol had already begun. Scattered throughout the Federation's territories, unseen by their sensors, humanity's true power was already at work. Advanced stealth ships, cloaked beyond detection, were infiltrating their systems, listening, watching, mapping out every weakness. The moment the Federation made their move, they wouldn't be fighting the destroyer. They wouldn't even be fighting the full force of Earth's fleet. They would be fighting an enemy that already knew their plans, an enemy that had already won. Hayes turned to Carter. "Deploy the next phase. The Federation thinks they still have a chance." A slow smile crossed his face. "Let's show them how wrong they are." In the cold depths of space, where light barely reached and silence reigned, Shadow Fleet Protocol was in motion. No one in the Galactic Federation saw them. No sensors detected their approach. No alarms sounded as humanity's hidden fleet moved like ghosts through the void. They were not here to attack, not yet. They were here to prepare the battlefield before the war even began. Aboard the Federation's Central Defense Station, Xerxes Prime, High Chancellor Orion sat in his war room, surrounded by his top generals and admirals. A massive holographic display flickered before them, outlining known human fleet movements, or at least what they thought were human fleet movements. The destroyer remains stationed near Kepler, an Alvari strategist reported. Additional human warships have been detected at their core systems, but there's no indication of a full mobilization. The Zith admiral, his mandibles clicking in agitation, interjected. And that is precisely what concerns me. We have no evidence of a grand fleet, no proof that they have more ships of the destroyer's caliber. What if they... They must have more, Orion interrupted, his voice cold. No empire places its strongest asset on the front line without reinforcement. The fact that we haven't seen them only means one thing. Silence filled the war room. Finally, an Alvari officer spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. They're already here. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, because it was the only explanation that made sense. Humanity had revealed its battleship, but the true war was being fought in the shadows. Deep inside Zith Dominion space, a Federation-controlled refueling station floated in the darkness, supplying ships along the major trade routes. Its defenses were standard enough to deter pirates, but not built to withstand a true assault. It didn't need to be. The Federation was at peace, or at least that's what they thought. Unseen by every watchful eye, a human stealth ship hung in the void, completely silent. Its hull was coated in experimental materials that absorbed sensor waves, rendering it invisible to scans. It did not approach. It did not attack. It simply listened. Inside the vessel, Lieutenant Marcus Hall watched as streams of intercepted transmissions scrolled across his screen, messages from Federation warships, encrypted orders from military command, fleet deployments, supply routes. They weren't just gathering intelligence. They were rewriting the war before it began. A soft chime echoed through the bridge. The data extraction was complete. Hall turned to his team. Send the package to Black Station. Let High Command know where to strike. The information surged through encrypted channels, traveling undetected through the vast galactic network. Within hours, Earth's top strategists would know the location of every major fuel depot, supply station, and weak point in the Federation's infrastructure. By the time the Federation fired its first shot, they would already be bleeding out. Back on the destroyer, Admiral Hayes stood on the command deck, reading the latest intelligence reports from Shadow Fleet. His officers awaited his orders, but they already knew what was coming. "It's time," Hayes said, his voice calm. "Send the next message to the Federation." Commander Carter nodded, transmitting a simple, untraceable signal across all Federation channels, a message that needed no explanation. "We are already inside your walls." And with that, humanity's war had already begun. Panic spread like wildfire through the Galactic Federation. The message, simple and chilling, had been broadcast across every secure military channel. "We are already inside your walls." No one knew where it came from. No transmission logs, no traceable source. It had simply appeared as if humanity itself had whispered it into their ears. Chancellor Orion stood in his private chamber, staring at the words repeating on his holographic screen. His claws twitched in agitation. "What does this mean?" he demanded. A Federation intelligence officer, his Alari skin paler than usual, swallowed hard. "It means, Chancellor, they're already here." Orion's blood ran cold. How could they have infiltrated us so quickly? The officer shook his head. We don't know. There have been no confirmed intrusions, no breaches in our security systems, no sign of human fleets inside our borders. And yet, the message was clear. The humans wanted them to know. Somewhere, somehow, they had slipped past the Federation's defenses. They weren't attacking. They weren't negotiating. They were simply waiting. It was psychological warfare at its purest. The worst part, it was working. Aboard the destroyer, Admiral Jonathan Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the incoming data streams from Shadow Fleet. Their silent infiltrations had gone undetected. Every major refueling station, supply line, and fleet deployment was now logged in Earth's war database. They knew everything. Commander Carter approached. Federation forces are scrambling. Their fleets are repositioning defensively, but it's chaotic. They don't know where we'll strike. Hayes nodded. Good, they're scared. Carter continued, but fear only buys us time. Eventually, they'll take action. Hayes glanced at the galactic map hovering before him. The Federation forces were spread thin. They had no central rallying point, no single command hub that could withstand a full-scale engagement. If war came, they would shatter like glass under a hammer. But that was not the plan. Not yet. They'll come to us first, Hayes said. That's the nature of frightened empires. They don't attack immediately. They probe. They test boundaries, send spies, maybe even a small fleet to gauge our response. Carter frowned. You're suggesting they'll poke the bear. They don't think we're a bear, Commander, Hayes said with a small smirk. They think we're a sleeping giant. They'll try to wound us first, see if we react. Carter's eyes darkened, and when they do... Hayes's voice was steel. We won't react. We'll end them before they understand what's happening. He turned back to the display. But first, we let them think they have control, give them space to breathe, let them believe they're making the right moves. Carter exhaled slowly. We're playing the long game then. Hayes nodded. And when the time comes, his eyes gleamed like a predator waiting for the kill, we take everything from them. The Galactic Federation was unraveling. In the weeks following humanity's message, we are already inside your walls. The once mighty alliance of empires had begun to fracture. Fear gripped their leaders. Paranoia spread like an infection. No one trusted their own security. No one knew where the humans were hiding or if they had already infiltrated the highest levels of their governments. The worst part, there was no proof of any actual infiltration. No human agents had been caught. No data breaches had been detected. No sabotage had occurred. And yet they all believed it had. The Zith Dominion purged hundreds of suspected human spies, only to realize too late that they had executed their own intelligence officers. The Alvari Confederation imposed strict security measures, limiting interstellar travel and tightening border controls, suffocating their own economy in the process. The Federation was tearing itself apart, and Admiral Jonathan Hayes watched it all unfold from the bridge of the destroyer. Inside the Alvari High Council chamber, Chancellor Orion sat at the head of a long, gleaming table, his advisors gathered before him. The room was dimly lit, an unspoken acknowledgement of their desperation. The once proud leaders of the Federation now whispered like hunted prey. We must act, an Alvari general said. We cannot live under the shadow of humanity forever. Agreed, growled a Zith admiral, his mandibles twitching. We strike now before they strike us. Do we even know where to strike? An intelligence officer countered. For all we know, they want us to attack. They could be leading us into a trap. Orion exhaled sharply. He had ruled over the Federation for decades, but never had he felt this powerless. "They have made no official demands," he said. "They have not declared war. They have not expanded their borders. They have done nothing except wait." The silence in the room was suffocating. That was what terrified them the most. If the humans had invaded, the Federation could have fought back. If they had made demands, negotiations could have begun. But humanity had done neither. They had simply existed, and the Federation was losing because of it. Orion clenched his fists. "We need to reclaim control of this situation. We will force humanity's hand." The Zith general leaned forward. "You mean provoke them?" "I mean test them," Orion corrected. "Send a fleet to the Kepler defense line, a show of force, not an attack, just enough to see how the humans respond." "And if they respond with the destroyer?" someone asked. Orion's expression was grim. "Then at least we'll know how they intend to play this war." Meanwhile, aboard the destroyer, "They're coming." Commander Elise Carter placed a data pad on the command table, showing the latest movement of Federation forces. A fleet of nearly 200 warships had begun mobilizing towards the Kepler defense line. Admiral Hayes studied the data in silence. "They won't attack," he said finally. "Not yet, this is a test." Carter nodded. "They want to see if we'll back down." A slow smirk crossed Hayes's face. "Then let's teach them what happens when you test humanity." He turned to his officers. "Deploy Project Nightmare. Let them see what they should be afraid of." Carter's eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure? We haven't revealed it yet." Hayes's voice was calm, certain. "It's time the Federation learned that the destroyer isn't the worst thing humanity has built." Hours later at the Kepler defense line, the Federation fleet arrived in formation, weapons powered but not armed, an unmistakable show of force. And then they saw it, a new ship, larger than anything the galaxy had ever known. A monstrous, abyss-black warship, its hull absorbing light like a void in space. It made the destroyer look small. No records existed of its creation. No intelligence reports had ever mentioned its existence. It had never been seen before. The Federation fleet, despite its numbers, hesitated. And then the ship spoke. "You are standing at the edge of your own destruction." The message rang across all channels, cold and emotionless. The Federation fleet, once so confident in their show of force, found themselves staring into the unknown. And for the first time, they understood the truth. Humanity had never needed to fight them because humanity had already won. The void of space had never felt so suffocating. The Federation fleet, once assembled as a proud show of strength, now drifted in eerie silence before the monstrous warship that had appeared before them. No records, no intelligence reports, no prior warnings. This was something new, something the humans had chosen to reveal at this very moment. The ship had no name displayed on its hull, no insignia, no visible energy output, and yet its presence alone was crushing. "You are standing at the edge of your own destruction." The voice was synthetic, almost lifeless, yet it carried a weight that pressed into the minds of every Federation officer. The message had been received loud and clear. The final warning. Chapter 1, Face to Face with the Unknown. Admiral VRA of the Alvari Federation felt his throat tighten. His hands shook slightly as they moved toward the control buttons, but something made him stop. He had been a warrior for many years, fighting brutal battles against heartless enemies. Yet right now, he felt like a tiny bug looking up at a massive beast ready to devour him. "What are your orders, Admiral?" one of his crew members asked. Her voice was so quiet it was almost impossible to hear. VRA's thoughts were spinning wildly. What was this mysterious object floating in front of them? Was it another super weapon, something designed to destroy entire planets? The giant had already been scary enough, but this was completely different and far more frightening. What made it worse was that Earth's people had never told anyone about it. They had kept this terrible secret hidden until this very moment. VRA forced himself to breathe deeply and stand up straighter. "Open a communication line," he commanded. A soft beeping sound told them the connection was ready. "This is Admiral VRA of the Star Alliance. Tell us who you are," he said firmly. Nothing but empty silence filled the space around them. Then suddenly the enemy ship spoke back. Its voice sounded like a machine, cold, emotionless, and completely without mercy. "Your name means nothing to us. Your military rank is worthless. Your entire fleet is not strong enough." VRA felt his blood turn to ice. This wasn't someone trying to make a deal or talk things through. This was a clear and direct warning. And it wasn't just meant for him, it was a message for every single person in the Alliance. Every instinct in VRA's body told him to turn around, take his ships, and escape as fast as possible. But he understood what would happen if he gave up now. The Alliance would lose all respect and power. Earth's people had already shown they possessed strength beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The moment the Alliance admitted they were beaten, they would become nothing more than servants living under Earth's control. He had no other choice. "Keep our position," VRA ordered his crew. "We didn't come here to start a fight." Another long moment of terrifying silence passed. Then the machine voice spoke again. "Then you should go away." The command wasn't screamed at them. There were no weapons powering up or attack ships moving into position. It was simply said like it was an obvious fact, one that carried the promise of something terrible if they didn't listen. VRA squeezed his hands into tight fists. Part of him wanted to fight back, to demand explanations, to prove that the Alliance wouldn't be scared into submission. But his scanning equipment was telling him a completely different story. There were no living beings on that warship. No body heat, no biological signs, no crew members at all. This ship wasn't controlled by people, which meant it was something entirely different. When he realized what this meant, it shook him down to his very soul. VRA's officers were all waiting for his decision. The tension in the air was so thick you could almost touch it. He could order them to move forward, demand to talk, or maybe even fire a test shot to see how strong the ship's defenses really were. But deep in his heart, he already knew exactly how that would end. He took a long, slow breath. "We're pulling back." Shocked murmurs spread through the command center, but nobody argued with him. Nobody wanted to stay in this place any longer. The fleet began to change direction. One by one, each ship turned away from the Kepler defense area, retreating without saying another word. Chapter 2: The Watchers. On board the mysterious human warship, Admiral Jonathan Hayes observed the Alliance forces vanishing from his sensor screens. He let himself smile just a little bit. "Phase 1 is finished," Commander Elise Carter announced. "They fell for our plan perfectly." "They were never going to actually fight us," Hayes replied, crossing his arms. "But now they know something important. Now they understand that the giant wasn't our most powerful weapon." Carter nodded in agreement. "What do we do next?" Hayes turned to look out the window at the endless field of stars spread out before them. "Now," he said quietly, "now we let them figure out that they've already been defeated." Chapter 3: The Crumbling Council. Inside the Alliance's war planning room on Xerxes Prime, The air felt heavy and hard to breathe. High Chancellor Orland sat at the front of the large chamber. His face showed no emotion as the recorded footage from VRA's fleet played on the huge screen in the center of the room. The enemy warship had never fired a single shot, and yet the Alliance had run away. "They didn't even attack us," one of the council members whispered in disbelief. "They didn't have to," Orland said with a sharp breath. "They're showing us just the tip of their sword, making sure we see it clearly before they decide whether to use it." The Alliance was now facing an impossible choice. They could try to negotiate, but what could they possibly offer in return? They could try to gather their armies, but how do you prepare for war against an enemy that has already won before the first battle even begins? Orland gritted his teeth. He refused to give up. He would not allow Earth's people to control the entire galaxy without anyone standing against them. But every feeling in his gut told him the same terrifying truth. The Alliance's future was no longer something they could control. It was completely in Earth's hands. The Star Alliance had existed for more than 1,000 years. It had survived wars, economic disasters, rebellions, and attacks from outside forces. It had been damaged but never completely broken. Until now, Earth's people had accomplished something that no empire, no military leader, no alien species had ever managed to do before. They had destroyed the Alliance's fighting spirit without firing even a second shot. All across the galaxy, fear began to grow and spread like a disease in every major power center. The Alvari, who had once been proud and unbreakable, started pulling their fleets back from disputed areas. They were too afraid to risk making Earth's people angry. The Zith Empire, famous for its ruthless expansion across space, suddenly stopped all its military operations. Its warlords weren't sure if Earth's people were secretly watching them from hidden places. Trade routes that had operated for centuries suddenly collapsed. Diplomats worked desperately to save alliances that were already falling apart. Rumors of surrender spread through government meetings, and in the darkest, most secret places in space, some leaders even whispered about something previously unthinkable, that the Alliance should bow down to Earth before it was too late. Chapter 5, The Final Message. And then the last message arrived. It wasn't sent through normal diplomatic channels. It wasn't delivered by an ambassador or through official space communication systems. Instead, it simply appeared on every planetary communication device, every military computer, and every leader's private terminal at exactly the same time. The war ended before it started. You just didn't realize it yet. Earth doesn't want to conquer you. We don't need war. But if you ever raise a hand against us again, there will be nothing left of you. The Alliance's leaders, already crushed under the enormous weight of their own terror, knew exactly what they had to do. One by one, the great empires of the galaxy quietly canceled their war plans. Defensive fleets were called back home. Fighting along Earth's borders stopped completely. The once mighty Star Alliance, a partnership that had ruled for 1,000 years, was reduced to nothing more than broken, obedient puppet states. Chapter 6, Victory Without Battle. No peace treaty was ever signed. No formal surrender was ever given, but the message was crystal clear. Earth's people didn't rule the galaxy through raw military force. They ruled through absolute certainty, the certainty that if the Alliance ever dared to challenge them again, it would be the very last mistake they would ever make. As Admiral Jonathan Hayes watched the final Alliance fleets withdraw from contested space areas, he allowed himself a rare moment of true satisfaction. The war had never really been about controlling territory. It had never been about conquest or taking over worlds. It had been about establishing a clear rule and making sure everyone understood it. Earth's people had been underestimated and overlooked for far too long. That time was now officially over. He turned to Commander Elise Carter with a look of quiet triumph. "It's finished." Carter nodded and let out a long breath. "What happens next?" Hayes smiled slightly, but there was something cold in his expression. "Now we watch and we wait, because there will always be someone who forgets the lesson Earth taught the galaxy today, and when they do, we'll be right here to remind them." The stars continued to shine in the endless darkness of space, but now they shone on a galaxy that would never be the same again. Earth had spoken, and the universe had listened. The age of human dominance had begun not with explosions and battles, but with a single, terrifying demonstration of what true power really looked like. And in the silence that followed, every civilization in the galaxy understood one simple truth. Earth didn't need to prove its strength anymore. Everyone already knew.